It's the Alien Conspiracy Podcast. We are your hosts, Agent ETA,
Agent Kruger,
and Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine conspiracies, UFO sightings, and all things strange. You can follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Special this week, we have a brand new agent joining us, Agent Kruger. Say hello, Agent Kruger.
Hey, what's up? How you doing?
All right, welcome to the show. Before we get started here, it's time for Strange Events, Bizarre Facts, the Unbelievable Revealed. This is the Mind Boggle of the Week. All right, this time around, what I want to do is I'm going to read a quote, and I want you guys to try and guess when this quote is from. But like, just pick a decade or whatever. See if you can get within 10 years or something. Okay, here's the quote. In space, there are countless constellations, suns, and planets. We see only the suns because they give light. The planets remain invisible, for they are small and dark. There are also numberless Earths circling around their suns, no worse and no less than this globe of ours, for no reasonable mind can assume that heavenly bodies that may be far more magnificent than ours would not bear upon them creatures similar or even superior to those upon our human Earth. All right, guys, obviously this is a historical quote, but if you had to guess, when do you think that's from?
Agent Kruger, you go first.
Oh man, you said when or who? Who is it by?
Hey, either way.
Oh yeah.
I would say maybe. I don't know. It's hard. That's a hard one. Maybe go with I'm gonna go with an author, C.S. Lewis. Maybe I'm gonna throw that out there.
Good guess.
Okay.
I like.
All right.
I like the guess. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess Giardo Bruno, 1584.
You son of a bitch.
Or Giordano? How the hell? Or whatever. I know Bruno. Bruno.
Yeah, Giorgio
Bruno.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I heard this quote on another show that I listened to. On another show I listened to, it's a UFO podcast or something. I forget what it's called, but the host is the famous in the world of ufology, Alejandro Rojas is a journalist type dude, been doing this forever. And he read this on his show, and I was actually really surprised to hear that this quote was from 1584, because back then they still thought that like the Earth was the center of the universe. But this guy was sort of forward thinking, and he was influenced perhaps by other people, maybe from the Middle East. But it turns out he was executed in 1600 because of heresy. And he did a lot of different stuff to kind of piss off the Roman Inquisition, but insisting that Earth was not only was Earth not the center of the universe, but there were lots of other planets out there with life on it. That kind of got him killed. But I just thought that this was a really interesting quote from so long ago, so I figured I'd put it on the show. So props to Alejandro Rojas for providing me with this quote, which I was unaware of before I listened to his show. And
Yeah. And by the way, I didn't know that off the top of my head. I typed that into Google while you were saying it.
Yeah, I figured it's pretty obscure.
I was like, oh, yeah. I got the Google machine right in front of me. I'll just go ahead and use it.
I have all the power at my fingertips.
Yes.
Okay. It's called Open Minds UFO Radio is the name of his podcast. It's a really good podcast compared to ours. He's much more knowledgeable, and he has guests. Like he's probably actually had Travis Walton on his show before, kind of a thing. Like he's one of the bigger names, whereas we're just kind of like a little podunk, just kind of hanging out, tossing back beers and whatever. So
we're just bullshitting.
His is a little more straight-laced than ours as well, so it just depends on what you're looking for. If you want to hear a bunch of idiots talking about UFOs drunkenly, then this is the show for you, I guess.
Hey.
No,
yeah,
except
so
for
let's get to the... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I say except for Agent Kruger, he's one of those goddamn millennials. He can't buy alcohol yet.
No, I can buy it. Don't worry. I'm 28. Don't worry.
Well, yeah, anybody younger than us now, we just call them millennials. It doesn't matter how old you are.
That it is fitting. Okay, I won't. No argument here yet.
I gotta admit, I definitely do not understand like the current succession of generations, because I thought I remember when I was a kid. I'm sure I'm dating myself. I thought I remember being called Generation X, but now I am to be understood that I'm technically a millennial, I guess. But I refuse to accept that. 83.
Welcome to the club, dude.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I'm gonna send you a jacket. I'm gonna get you a tote. I'm gonna get you hipster glasses.
No.
I'm gonna get you a thermos. It's gonna be great.
Can you give me a Pendleton flannel?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Just need sizes. Just need dimensions.
I'm gonna have to grow myself a sturdy mustache.
Go with one of those good old handlebars.
Yeah.
I got the mutton chops.
Or a little curlicue going on there. I like the old school like barber type curl mustache. You know what I mean?
Oh,
yeah. Those are nice.
Well, hey, let's get to this. What the podcast is supposed to be about today here. Some Travis Walton action.
The man's hair who's never changed a single color. It's never gonna turn gray. I swear.
That is true. I am a little bit jelly of his hair because I'm going well and bald and gray myself already.
Oh man, I'm on the way.
What happens to the best of us? But yes. Anyways, yes, the man does have a full head of hair. But the event in question happened in 1975, November 5th, 1975, in Snowflake, Arizona.
It was not exactly in Snowflake. It was about 10 miles south of Heber, and it was east of Phoenix. It was in the Snowflake area. It was like in the woods.
Yeah. It was that was the closest town, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, yeah. But this story is a very famous story. I mean, shit, the movie Fire in the Sky was based on the book that Travis Walton wrote, correct?
Correct. And that movie scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Very scary. Yeah.
I remember that one making quite the impact on me as well, for sure. It was pretty well made, I think.
Too well made, if you ask me.
Well, it's been described as one of the better accounts of a abduction story, within a movie, right?
Yeah, they did spice it up quite a lot, though.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's Hollywood, right? I think that's kind of to be expected.
All right, so let's get to it. Oh yeah, go ahead, Agent Kruger.
Sorry, late add in. It's just if there was anything to do, if that movie had any relation to Luke's story, that is mind-boggling at the least. So, and there's a lot of calls for it to be remade. So it'd be interesting to see who would get to play who and how scarier or less scarier it would be. With the new remake.
Well, it'd probably be an all-female cast.
Yeah. I was just going to say, my money is on Melissa McCarthy to play Travis Walton.
I think you're right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good call right there.
Okay, so I think we said it happened on November 5th, 1975. I think you said that, correct, already?
Mm-hmm.
Where were we? Okay.
Yeah, just at the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was a group of 7 people out in the forest. There was a contractor that was a friend of Travis Walton. His name was Mike Rogers, and they had been hired to thin out a bunch of scrub brush in the area. At the time, I have that Travis Walton at that time was 22 years old, and the forest that they were in is the Apache Sitgraves National Forest. Is that correct, I think?
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure how to pronounce that until I heard it pronunciated on a documentary. Pronounced? Whatever. Shut up.
Was I close?
I would say you're close.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go to 8 out of 10.
Success. Okay. So after they were done working for the day, about 6:15 p.m., they were driving home in a truck, and they saw a bright light behind a hill that they were approaching. And as they drove closer, they saw a disc-shaped object hovering about 100 feet away, and it was making a high-pitched buzzing sound. That they stopped the truck to kind of look at it, and what they saw was a brilliant white, solid metallic, saucer-shaped object, and it was approximately 15 feet in diameter and 8 feet thick, and it was hovering 20 feet off of the ground. And here's what happened next. This is an account from Travis Walton from an interview in November of 1975, so this is pretty close after the account. And I like to get witness statements as close to the event as possible so that they haven't had 20 years to kind of forget stuff. But anyways, here's what he said. We just finished working because it was getting dark. We packed up to leave and we all got in the truck and we were riding up the road. And we looked off to the right side of the road and I saw a glow that I thought was a sunset or something. I was about to comment when we came past the thicket that we were looking through to where we could see more clearly, and we saw a UFO hovering in the air about 30 yards off to the side of the road. Everybody started yelling and they stopped the truck. I wanted to get a closer look and I got out of the truck and I started over there. Everybody was yelling to come back, to stop. I stopped to look back. Somebody called my name and I turned back around and it started to make a noise and started to move. And I took one step. I crouched down behind a log that was there. And just as I started to raise up, I was just going closer. Oh, wait, no, I was just going to stand up. Edit! Just as I started to raise up, I was going to stand up. I didn't have any intention of going any closer, but it was just as if I was struck. It was kind of a physical blow. It just knocked me back. I don't remember seeing any flash of light or anything like what they described. I just lost consciousness. When I regained consciousness, I was looking up at a light shining down on me from the ceiling. I could tell I was lying up on a bed or a table or something because the ceiling was close. I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't quite bring myself totally awake. So that's his account of what happened. The other 6 men witnessed him being struck by a flash of light, by blue light, and it was like a beam about 20 inches wide. They saw him lifted from the ground with his arms and legs outstretched, and he flew back 10 feet through the air. After this happened and he was on the ground, they panicked and drove away real quick in their truck. They got about a quarter mile down the road and the truck ran off the road. And then at that point, the guy who was the contractor who was in charge of the whole thing, it was, what was his name again? Mike Rogers.
Mike Rogers?
Yeah, he decided to turn the truck around. He was the one driving. Because I guess after that, the panic maybe cleared a little bit. And he said, oh, wait, hold on. We got to go back and look for him. So they drove back and they looked for him in the area about 30 minutes, but they didn't find anything. After this, they drove to the police, and Rogers thought that Walton was actually dead. The police came back and searched the area, but they didn't find anything. At this point, the police started to think that maybe it was a hoax or some sort of, I don't know, something to cover up like a murder or something. Something weird was going on, but the police didn't really believe that it had anything to do with a UFO. Over the next few days, the police interrogated the 6 men repeatedly and gave them lie detector tests, which I'm not going to belabor the point over and over again, but I want to go on the record now as saying that I think personally lie detector tests are not reliable and should not be relied on as actual evidence. They're pretty much bullshit. Even the guy who invented the guy who invented the lie detector test even came out and said, hey, this is bullshit. You guys probably shouldn't use this for what you're using it for. So take it with a grain of salt, in my opinion. But anyways, of the 6, one of them was inconclusive and the other 5 passed the polygraph tests. So that's what happened while Walton was away. But he was away for 5 days, and after the event, he woke up in the middle of the road, just sort of lying there, and he saw this flying saucer hovering over him. And he saw it kind of shoot off into the distance and disappear without making any sound whatsoever. And of the 5 days, he only remembered about an hour of what had happened. And when he got back to civilization, he was shocked to find out that he'd actually been gone for 5 days. Here's what he reports seeing. Here's what he reports happening during his missing time. Like he said in his previous statement, he was on a table when he woke up. He saw 3 short, bald creatures in the room with him, looking over him, and they were wearing like orange-brown clothing. And the descriptions fit pretty well the typical gray alien. He said they had large brown eyes. He struck 2 of them after he had woken up, and he sent them flying across the room. He grabbed a nearby glass cylinder of some kind, and he made threatening motions toward the creatures with it. The creatures backed out of the room and left him alone by himself in there. He got out of the room and went down a hallway into an empty domed room that had a chair in its center. The chair had sort of levers and controls and buttons and things on it. He sat in the chair, and when he did so, he saw stars appear around him, sort of like in a planetarium, and he pushed a lever on the chair and the stars began to rotate. He got out of the chair, and at this time, a human-looking man came through the door. He looked normal except for very large eyes. He was wearing a blue jumpsuit and like a clear glass helmet. Walton asked him questions, but the man only grinned and made beckoning motions to kind of follow him. In his own words, "So we went out through the door, down to the right, and out to the left. There was a small room there. It had doors on it, and it was kind of like an airlock. It was just a small room with nothing in it, and then there was a door that went outside, and it was a ramp that went down, and it was cool outside. I could feel wind. There was a draft or something. It was a large room that this thing was sitting on the floor in there, and it was shaped like a drawing that they made, like the thing we saw the first time, only bigger. And there were 2 other things in there, other UFO, to look like flying saucers kind of, except that they were rounded and oval shaped, and they were really shiny like chrome. It was a big room, like there was a lot more room in there, and there was a curved ceiling. It curved this way, and it had flat ends to the room. I came out of the door, out of that first ship, facing this way, and there was a doorway across in the far wall. He led me across there and through that doorway down a hallway to a room, and I'd had a burning in my chest, and it was starting. I felt better. I was trying to get this man to tell me what, I asked him if he was from Earth and just anything I could think of, and he wouldn't answer. I was led down the hallway. The man sat me in a chair and in a room with 3 other people that were like himself. They were dressed in blue, and he went out. There was a door on the other side he went on through, and I sat in the chair and I tried to get the people to talk to me that were there, and they didn't have things on their head, and so I thought that maybe they could hear me, but they wouldn't answer either. There were 2 men and a woman in the room after the first man left. A man and a woman came from around the table, and they each took me by the arm and they led me over to the table and got me up on the table. And finally, I don't know why I should cooperate with them. They put a deal over my face. It was kind of like an oxygen mask thing. It was kind of clear, plastic, and it had a round black thing on it about that big, just attached to it. I looked up at the ceiling, which was just all solid light. There wasn't any light fixture or anything, but light in the room, just coming from the ceiling, and that was the last I remembered. I went to sleep, until I woke up. I was lying on the pavement. It was very cold. I woke up very suddenly and I looked up the roadway. I was lying outside, it was night, and I could see a light on the bottom of a flying saucer that looked just like the rounded ones that were inside there, and it was very shiny, but the only light came out of the bottom, and that went off, and it went straight up just really fast, just without a sound. And for anybody interested, you can definitely find a lot of interviews by Travis Walton online on YouTube or whatever if you look for them. So if you want to check out some more stuff that he said about this, there's plenty out there. So after that, he staggered. Yeah. So after that, he staggered to a payphone booth at a gas station and called his brother-in-law. And the rest is history. He was awarded $5,000 from National Enquirer for the best UFO story of the year. He passed 2 polygraph tests immediately after. He failed one, but that one was sort of covered up and then leaked out and, whatever. And his coworkers, as I said previously, they also past tests about seeing the UFO, and that kind of makes this a unique story because I'm not aware of any other abduction story where you have so many corroborating witnesses that basically saw it happen. I mean, they didn't see him get sucked into the ship, but they saw him get knocked out by the ship before they ran, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, and they all have the same story too.
Yeah. Later on, he did go through regression hypnosis, but he was unable to recover any more details of what happened to him during the 5 days that he was gone. And everybody has stuck to their stories. All 7 people, nobody's come out after the fact and said that they lied or anything like that. And it's been a long time, since 1975. And then the last thing that happened in the case is in the early 2000s, somebody went and took a soil sample in the area and they found that iron had been concentrated towards the top of the soil as if maybe the ship had some sort of really powerful electromagnetic engine. But if you look into that little bit, it's pretty inconclusive and kind of fishy, so I don't put too much stock into it. So that's the Travis Walton story in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Well said,
Yeah.
sir. Well said.
Oh, I thank you.
To touch on to that soil, when they experimented the soil and whatnot, or tested the soil, I didn't know about that little bit, but I did see that the trees, when they were noticing the growth patterns, seemed to go into one direction, would be in towards the center of where the ship would have been. Now that right there that trips me out, but I'm not sure what would be able to manipulate tree growth, really. I mean, how could you, like, I'm sorry to babble on here, but like, how could you manipulate it if you wanted to? Yeah,
I would have no idea. I don't know nothing about the subject really, as far as I forget what the term for studying plants is, but I mean, if that is the truth, and that is definitely something that you can't necessarily just skim over. It's something that should be investigated. I mean, me personally, when I'm trying to go over in my own mind and decide, is this an event that likely happened, or is it possibly a hoax or something like that? What I kind of keep on going over is some of the seemingly natural ways that these individuals reacted to the situation that was right in front of them, and also how consistent their stories have been. Like I put myself in, the driver's seat as Mike Rogers, and shit, if I was in the driver's seat of any vehicle and I saw something like that, I don't know how I would react. I might take the hell off as well. I don't necessarily think that that's an odd thing at all to do. And it does sound like they stopped, like you said, a quarter of a mile down the road. I've heard Mike Rogers say in interviews that it sounds like they kind of like got out for a second, talked about it and decided to go back, to look for him. And obviously they didn't find him because he had already been taken at that point, presumably, and if the story is to be believed, so I think that's a reasonable thing to do as well. If you reacted in haste and took off, got a little bit down the road, it would be very natural, I think, to stop and be like, wait a minute, we got to go back for him. I mean, that makes sense to me, especially it's a crew that have been working close together, in hard conditions. That creates a certain bond, right? So they're not going to leave that guy behind. So that makes perfect sense to me. Within the story, for me, there's one part that kind of makes me pause and think a little bit and discredits it maybe a little bit in my opinion, because but it's just my opinion on the situation. So when he said he was able to get up, and basically, attempt to fight these aliens, right? That's not something you really ever hear in most credible stories, I think. Usually you always hear about somebody being like locked down to a table and not being able to move. They can feel pain and everything, but they can't move. You know what I mean? That's the most common scenario I've heard. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me, that's kind of one of those things. Like when I heard that, I remember originally it's like, it doesn't sound realistic to me. You know what I mean?
I was just saying, yeah, no, I can get behind that, but at the same time, that's like the best case scenario for an abductee, right? Is to seize the opportunity to try to like break free and get out of there. So
Yeah.
your mind kind of jumps to this like, oh, that's different, and I maybe you would fill in the need to say, well, maybe this is a little bit more credible than the other ones just because this guy fought back, because that's what I would have done, on the normal.
Oh, you'd want to, right? You'd
Right.
hope you'd have. I don't know. I mean, shit, I might just be scared so bad I'd be locked in place just by because I'm scared.
That
but-
happens. That happens.
Sure.
I mean, it always goes. I mean, to not to interrupt, but I mean, I've had experiences where I've had friends in a place of danger, and where once and upon a time I've said, "Yeah, I would sprint to save you guys." All of a suddenly, I was given this fear, and I'm locked
Oh.
down, if you will. Like I just couldn't react, and thank God nothing serious happened in the end. But still, there was that moment where I froze.
Yeah. Have you have you ever had a fear boner?
No, I don't think I have.
No?
I hope I won't, because it'll come in the wrong time.
It's the worst
Literally.
kind of boner. It's never at the right time.
But it was only one time in wrestling, all right? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, nope.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
It depends on how tight your pants are and how big your log is, how much of an inconvenience it's going to be. It might stop
Yeah,
you from
yeah.
running under the right circumstances. You might be stuck there.
Yeah, that's true.
If it stops you from running, God bless you. You're
Yeah.
you're a specimen.
Good for you, sir.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, like the whole story is in my opinion pretty solid. Like I said, there was that one part that kind of makes me question it a little bit, but the consistency that all of these individuals have had throughout the years, and also Travis Walton, he's been very active within the UFO
Oh, yeah.
community throughout his whole
Yeah.
life.
Open book, really.
Yeah, the guy seems to be. I mean, if it's made up, he's put quite a bit of effort into being consistent. It's I guess it would be pretty impressive.
There would be more inconsistencies. I feel like there would be definitely at some point in time, somebody would come forward, because what's the point of hiding anymore?
Yeah.
You'd probably get bad publicity, good publicity. It doesn't matter. It's publicity in the end. So I think somebody would have seized their opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all of these guys, the experiences, have talked about like the negative repercussions that they had, afterwards, because everybody would basically, after he showed back up, and they knew, okay, well, they didn't kill him, because that was obviously one of the big concerns initially, because this crazy story these guys were telling, nobody's going to believe that, obviously. If I was a law enforcement officer receiving this story, I got to be honest, I probably wouldn't believe it either. I would also, especially, within the culture of back in those days in 1975, they assumed, well, these guys are quite possibly some dirty hippies getting high up in the mountains up there, they were either drunk or high. That was one of the first things that what was the officer's name? They had first contact with, or that they.
I want to
Blake
say it
Davis?
was Officer Hightower, but I don't think that's correct.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I remember seeing him in an interview saying that he purposefully got close to them right away just to see if he could smell like weed or alcohol on them, and he said that he didn't, and he said that many times in interviews that he did not. So it's I don't know that probably isn't a good excuse for what happened. You know what I mean? So I know that a lot of people, well, back in those days especially, but that's one of the things that skeptics will say is, nah, they're all doped up or something. Maybe they're on LSD or something. You know what I mean? And they imagined all of it. And Travis Walton really just got lost in the forest. Really is what happened.
That's the easy way out, though, right? I mean, that's the simple thing. I think I believe. By the way, it was Marlon Gillespie, right? Or if I could, the sheriff that was taking the story. I could be wrong. I think, but
Might be right.
I'm gonna look it up real quick.
I forget. I have the memory span of a goldfish.
I'll have you beat.
So, are there any other skeptical theories that you've heard to try to disprove this case?
Oh yeah, all kinds of them. But so the most plausible skeptical explanation, as far as I'm aware, is that they were really behind in their work. They were contracted to finish clearing out that brush by a certain period, by a certain date. And that's Mike Rogers, remember, was the one contracting that. And they were so far behind, they had no hope of finishing. So to get out of that, they concocted a UFO story, and they made Travis camp in the woods for 5 days, and that got him out of their contract. I guess that's the most plausible story.
Hey guys, we
What's
fucked on
up?
this contract, but I got an idea. just hear me out.
A bit crazy.
I could just
It's a bit
imagine,
crazy.
right?
Yeah.
I could just imagine. And then everybody, all seven of them, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You know? Well, yeah.
Oh yeah.
That
Let's do
could
that.
work.
Yeah, no, that's, in my opinion, that's just a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's more likely that they did this for publicity to get the, National Enquirer money that probably most people knew about, because that's a pretty well-known publication. So
Yeah.
I think that's more likely that they hoaxed it for that reason. But go ahead.
So the year being 1975 in itself, if this was all about money, I mean, wouldn't it have been there was one of them, and it was the youngest of the group, who was tagged by one of, if I'm not mistaken, was it Philip Class? Philip Class, and he was, must start over. I'm talking about the dude that was coming over, who tried to pay him off and tell him that for the amount of money, he would say that this whole thing was a hoax, and
Right.
disproving anything Travis Walton had to say. And at that time, that's a lot of money. So wouldn't you be inclined to just say, hey, yeah, fuck you guys? Because that guy, in fact, who was being offered money, I'm forgetting his name, but he could have made a grip. And in that time, that would have been perfect for him. A young guy with, I believe it was $10,000 at the time. That's a lot of money, especially now it's okay, but back
That's
then,
like $100,000 in, 2020 money.
right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't talk about Philip Class very much on this show because of exactly what you mentioned. He's probably the most well-known skeptic, but he's so ridiculous. Like, he's not credible. He never makes credible arguments, and he does stuff like what you're talking about, which I completely forgot about, by the way. Thank you for bringing that up. That's, I think, a very important aspect of this case. But yeah, he totally tried to bribe somebody to falsify the case in his direction, and they didn't go for it, of course.
That in itself already trying to influence somebody's decision against what they're already trying to say. Either he's trying to fast track his way out of this case or whatever the hell it may be. That's a negative on the whole thing, and I think that disproves anything he's trying to bring up against the case in itself.
Yeah, I think that Philip Class was a government disinformation agent. Maybe not directly employed, but I think they were, at the very least, they were paying him off to debunk this stuff. But that's actually an entire other case episode that we could do. I don't want to really get into that here because it's a whole other can of worms. But yeah,
he does seem like a professional liar, if you get my drift, like somebody who wants to instill lies.
Yeah. Well, and the personal attacks and just how nasty he was. He was not just saying, I don't believe this stuff. He actually wanted to destroy people's lives in the process. It was more well beyond just, I don't believe what these people are saying.
So truly the Satan of conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Or
Didn't he try to get somebody institutionalized or something?
That's not surprising.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did at some point. I forget.
I vaguely remember. I could be confused.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't pay much attention to him because he doesn't have any credibility to me. But I do remember reading about that, actually, now that you mention it. We should do a case file on him. The only reason I haven't suggested it yet is because, like, it's just going to be so negative. It's going to be like a bummer the whole time.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a fun episode.
Yeah, that's
no,
true.
no, yeah.
That guy was a real Debbie Downer. They said that in the 70s, right? I don't know.
A negative Nathaniel.
Yes.
Negative Nathaniel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Real dickhead.
Pretty much, yeah. So yeah, some of the details of this case to me do seem a little strange. Like you were saying earlier, ETA, it's unusual. I can't think of any other case where somebody's allowed to a major case, like this, where somebody's allowed to just sort of stroll about a UFO and then, they're just walking around and then they send somebody in to grab them and it looks like a human. So you have two different races, which is not super unusual, but it's not.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, it's not necessarily super common either. One quote I saw said that this case is unusual for abduction stories and that it's actually not all that crazy as far as what happens. It's, he wakes up.
No, it's not.
He does what anybody would do in that situation. He freaks out. He goes into another room. He sees a chair and he sort of sits down and then they take him and they put him to sleep. It's pretty straightforward case and it makes a lot of sense. As far as I see it, like there's no way to prove that it's true, but there's no way to disprove it either. You kind of have to decide on your own if you believe he's credible and his 6 friends are credible. At the very least, I definitely think something weird happened to these people. And if you take all of their testimony at face value, I think it's very credible that he was abducted somehow. Maybe it was some sort of top secret government thing like from the X-Files or whatever, or maybe it really was aliens. We have no way of knowing for sure. But I don't know, that's sort of how I feel about the case. What do you guys think? What do you think, Agent Kruger? Do you think it's a credible account, or do you think it's all hogwash, or what?
It's hard, like I said earlier. I mean, there's so much give and take with it, I mean, if you hear it from himself, Travis, he doesn't really end it. Even it was in the documentary Travis I watched not too long ago, that he ends it with that he would like to think that there was no ill intention if it were, because it's real to him. So when he was struck by the light, he feels like he was dead for those 5 days, and the aliens took him to revive him and help him get back on his feet, really. And I would like to believe that too. So, I think this is a credible thing. I think given some of the tests and some of the samples that have been taken around the area where he's claimed to have been abducted, I think there's just so much to it where it's like what would make trees bow out the way they are and grow at the exceptional rate that they are growing at if they weren't exposed to radiation.
Yeah, that's a strange detail. I wonder if maybe some force kind of bent the branches in that direction, and after they kind of got bent, they started growing in that direction. I mean, I'm not sure what would cause that.
See, yeah, I would get that too, but believe it or not, I have family out in New Hampshire, and I've been out there, and there's no one congregated area that's feeling it. The whole area is feeling whatever weather it would be. So I don't know if the best description that they gave it or example was how in Chernobyl the trees are almost similar in the growth pattern right now, and with Chernobyl being a nearly worldwide extinction event on its own, with the radiation just spreading everywhere, which thank God it hasn't yet, with the elephant's foot still doing what it's doing. But
they built quite the containment thing.
They did,
facility
they
or
did,
whatever around it.
They did.
I don't think it's a permanent fix, but
I'm not sure. But I haven't really. They removed the groundwater that sits under it and everything. Like there's like natural groundwater that sits under the actual elephant's foot. So if it were to make any sort of contact with it, it would make another explosion, just like when it threw the tons of steel and everything around that was containing its core, like when it first happened. So that would just suck, obviously. But I don't think it would be a worldwide extinction event, as I was so dramatically putting it. But I mean, to have that as an example, though, Chernobyl, showing the trees around it, what happens with radiation being so highly exposed to it, that it's hard to remove that example and that fact from the case, is that there's trees that have had heavy radiation or some sort of like blast of energy that it has altered their natural course, and the only thing that you could do that is on a the only way you could do that is on a molecular level. And I don't think Travis Walton, no offense to him, is smart enough to go around changing the microatoms and everything and getting down to that really fine detail. So unless that is false in itself, and I would not know, and I did not know as I said that. So yeah.
Well, in my opinion, I mean, there's I think one very interesting. I mean, so he says that he thinks that when he got hit with that blue light or that beam or what have you, he was dead for 5 days, right? So that kind of makes a little sense, I suppose, because he's the one that approached the UFO. You know what I mean? That UFO was there, but he got out of the vehicle and went towards it. So
What's the saying?
Maybe it was an accident.
Killed the cat? Sorry.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, curiosity killed the cat, right? So hey, that sounds plausible. You know what I mean? To me, I do agree fully that something happened. Whether it was an actual UFO abduction, or if it was a group hallucination, something crazy like that, which I think is less likely. But who knows? But I think something happened. I would agree with Agent Anderson.
It's interesting to hear or see the comparisons from the movie to what the actual events were. So I don't, do you guys know much more about that? Or were those, because there was that moment of when he got out and broke out of the consciousness, right? When he was defending himself. So I think that right there, I want to know everything he saw in that moment. So I didn't look into this myself, so I'm kind of asking a question as I say this, is anything that movie portrayed accurate to what he saw on the ship? Because do you guys...
I mean, I remember watching the movie when I was younger, but I haven't watched it in so many years. I really don't think I could give a good opinion on it, to be honest.
Okay.
I think from what I read, the movie is largely inventive. So you have certain moments in the movie when he's covered by that latex-looking layer and he's sort of suffocating in there. Yeah. And then he breaks free of that. That's probably more symbolic of his mental struggle for consciousness rather than what actually happened to him. From what I understand, the portrayal in the movie is not really that accurate to what he saw in the ship.
Mm-hmm. And they didn't really show, from what I can remember, is that moment where he said, unless I didn't see it, it seemed like they portrayed the aliens on the ship, or the extraterrestrials on that ship, as like little, like grays, but they had like almost a tannish skin like color, and they were like scampering around like little kids, which is creepy as hell on its own. But I don't remember if they ever showed the humanoid person that came forward to help guide him to the next room or whatever it was. And when I hear him talk about that just seems like one of them threw on a suit and had a helmet that would alter their face to a human, so it would calm him down. But then when he mentioned that they didn't have a helmet on, that kind of makes me, hey, what the hell is going on there? But I do think from what he expressed in his claims and what the movie got accurate was the light that he explained was the light that was radiating from the ceiling was not like a flashlight or some sort of like direct light. It was just light coming from the top. And that just fascinates me. I'm just like, what the hell else did he see that he can't remember or doesn't want to remember? So,
or doesn't even know how to describe, maybe even.
Yeah.
Right? That's, yeah.
one thing that's I thought about the case is a lot of abduction cases, they'll remember things later on, whereas this one, I wonder if he was just completely unconscious the entire time, and that's why he never recalled any more about the days that he was there. And I think you sort of touched on this a little bit, Agent Kruger, but in an interview, Walton actually said that he thought it was an accident that the beam hit him because he was too close, like you said, and that they were actually trying to save his life. It was not a straight up abduction. They were trying to save him because they had inadvertently killed him with their machine, with their flying saucer. So that would be, kind of an interesting angle on the whole thing.
I got excited on that, and I failed myself by not expanding on that, is that blue light. Now, again, kind of rewinding a little bit, and I hope I'm not taking too much of your guys' time when I say this, but...
No, not at all.
The blue light that they described, it reminded me of the Demon Core. Have you guys heard of it? You guys, Fat Boy and Little Man, the two bombs that were used in World War II. I'm sure you guys know. I don't have to give you a history lesson, obviously, but
yeah,
the Demon Core that was used into the bombs that were dropped, the blue light that emitted from the Demon Core the core when it made contact with the brick that was being dropped by one of the doctors that were I'm sorry, I'm gonna start over. When there was the horrific accident with the Demon Core, when the brick fell on top of the core and a blue light shot out and radiating from the core itself, not just one case of this, but two cases. It would be interesting to find out that core was somehow related to this case, where not that Demon Core, but some sort of nuclear energy that was being tested by our government that shot out that type of energy. And if Travis's body was found and it was an autopsy was conducted, it would raise more questions than if he survived. So if this was a government accident through their prototype, I could see that being a thing, but it's just, I would like to believe that the aliens, it's like a hitting a deer. They didn't mean to. There's more innocence in this than there is, bad intentions or to test the pain or whatever it is of a human. But it's interesting. The only controversy I would say that's the most relevant at this time, and if you could just easily chalk it up to the government trying to disprove it, is the whole, when he came out 30 years after the book's release, I'm kind of quoting here and paraphrasing from Wikipedia, but when he did the Moment of Truth show all those years ago on Fox, or I think in like 2016, around there, but he was just asked flat out, was this a hoax? And he answered, or was this real? Basically, in layman's terms, and he said yes. And they said the polygraph came back negative, or saying that he lied, or false, that he was lying. But that was conveniently at the end of the entire series of questions that led up to that just basic ass question. So I think I'm with you 100% with, the validity of these polygraph tests. I don't know. I think what they're testing, like, an anxious person's gonna fail every time. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a little anxious here and there sometimes when there's nothing to be anxious about. So it's odd.
All you got to do is just picture ETA in his underwear, and you won't be nervous anymore.
I don't know. I think that's gonna give me nightmares more than.
That's worse. That's even worse. Never mind. No, but yeah, you're totally right. I think on that show they can make him. It's so open interpretation when you're reading those polygraph tests. You could have two different people look at the same chart. One of them says he's lying and the other doesn't. It's open to interpretation. It's not science. It's not based on anything factual. It's, in fact, the science says that the only thing a polygraph test is good for is let's say you arrest somebody and you tell them, I'm going to give you a polygraph test. that might psych them out enough to where they'll confess. But other than that, it's not really worth anything. You cannot use it in a court of law. It is not admissible in court because it's not like a valid scientific test. It's, like I said earlier, the guy who invented it said it's all bullshit and we shouldn't use it for anything. I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
Yeah, no worries.
One other thing that you kind of made me think of is when you're talking about the human-shaped guys that came into the room. So I wondered if, like you're saying, they put on a disguise, like almost like a hologram or something. And like they looked human, but they couldn't talk to him at all. And they had like a helmet. Remember, you're talking about that. Like, what if
big eyes?
Yeah. What if, like it was a disguise? Exactly. That's kind of an interesting part of the case that I think might sort of explain like they didn't want to hurt him. They were trying to help him, but here he is panicking around the ship. So they got to kind of corral him. So they say, all right, John, it's your turn. Go put on the suit. Ah, damn it. I got to dress up like a monkey again, But that was another one of the interesting details of the case where, because he wasn't wearing a helmet. He didn't need, some sort of oxygen thing to keep him alive. So why would they have to wear a helmet in their own spaceship unless, like, they had gotten some transmissions from us and they had seen in our science fiction movies that that's what we thought, space people looked like. So that's how they designed their costumes, maybe something out of like one of our movies. And that's why it looked a little goofy with like their eyes being too big. And I think one of the details was they had like their eyes were like gold colored or something. Maybe that's just they thought that's the form that would be the most calming to them at the time. But who knows?
A detail that he included in that, though, that I think it's a little bit more, he didn't really expand on, or if he has, I haven't seen it yet. But when he woke up, when he was being led by that humanoid creature, or if he was in the midst of his panicking, running through the ship for the brief moment that he did before he got to the control room, or whatever room it was with the stars and everything that he could see, he was able to see like a hangar type bay where he saw two ships grounded, but in all chrome. And I thought that was an interesting point because he might have been just taken up straight to the mothership. I mean, it sounded like he was on something a lot bigger than what he could have been picked up on.
Right.
And
yeah.
That right there in itself is just such a mind-blowing concept, but maybe they had the ability to create that oxygen within that ship. I mean, the light that was radiating from the ceiling that he described, what if that was an artificial sun of some sort? Like, what if we're speaking of something that is just so far ahead of our comprehension that it's just, I don't blame him for his brain just having the ultimate shart and just forgetting everything. So
yeah. Well, how are you going to react if you're faced with something like that? You're not going to be able to fully absorb what's happening. And like you said, you're not going to comprehend any of it. You're just going to probably freak out,
If I was Agent ETA, I would panic and defend myself. I would have grabbed that object as Agent ETA would and defend myself, because I know for a fact that, I would just panic. I would panic, but I would swipe.
It's clobbering time.
Yeah, there's a reason we have the fight and flight instinct, and if I can't fly because I'm trapped, I'm gonna fight my ass off. And that's
something's gonna happen if I have the ability for it, I guess.
Yeah.
But what you were talking about actually kind of reminded me of the stories I've heard from a lot of different UFO researchers and people that claim to have had direct contact and also have been part of like black ops operations and stuff. I don't know if you've ever gone down that rabbit hole, but I don't know how much I believe the majority of these people. But if what they say is to be believed, it's pretty sensational. You ever heard the stories about the Builder race and all the different billions of years old ruins basically around the solar system and around the universe, really?
That sounds vaguely familiar. It's not ringing a solid bell at the moment, but I'm sure if you'll show me a couple things, it'll hit.
It's at the very least, I find it a very enjoyable story to be told, But I don't know. It reminded me of because supposedly there have been astronauts that have, gone to like the moon or gone to, on other observation missions and have seen like monoliths and like ancient ruins and stuff. Like, just imagine if you were in that situation, if you were that astronaut, right? I mean, it's the thing. It's the thing of like, in my opinion, some of the best sci-fi movies I've ever seen, the ones, or even sci-fi books, just imagine being in that situation. You're in a spacesuit out on the moon, and freaking you see an ancient structure that, I mean, obviously a million thoughts will be going through your head as soon as you realize what you're looking at, right? I don't know. It's like whatever. I started to go off on that wild tangent, but like I don't know. That's something that I wonder about. Like even some like the megalithic structures around the world today. You know what I mean? Like all the different pyramids on every continent, really. And I guess you can call it. They're not necessarily always like shaped like the pyramids of Giza, but I would call a lot of the structures around the world pyramid in form, at least.
They do have similarities to ours. Now that you say that again, now it's hit me. There's like one on Mars, correct? If I'm not mistaken, and there's just one. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There supposedly is a group of pyramid-like structures that may form the ruins of an old city. But the pictures, those pictures are, and I forget the names of the pictures. I'm sure probably it's very easy to look up, obviously, but it's kind of tough in my opinion. Like I could see what they're talking about.
I get you.
But without having further evidence, something a little bit more clear to be direct, I just can't really. My imagination can still go wild with it. Don't get me wrong. It's like I said, so it's one of my favorite things to sit and ponder about, I suppose, when it comes to this type of stuff. But
we'll have to have a case on that. Then it sounds like we'll have to use that for some.
I would love it. Well, I would love
discussion.
I would love just to talk about some of the structures that we already know about here on Earth. I mean, there's holy crap. There's some amazing things. That don't get talked about enough. Well, obviously, everybody knows about the pyramids and everything, but some of the more unsung heroes, I would call them. Some of those structures that don't get enough notoriety, especially in the Western world. I would love to talk about them. I always pronounce it wrong. I think Gunung Padang. Am I pronouncing
Watch
that
your
right?
language.
How dare you, sir?
I'll have you know that she is a saint and she is a godsend.
Oh. But no, there's a lot, and we've talked about Göbekli Tepe also. We had an episode on that, and that's holy crap. That area is amazing. But we've already covered it. But yeah, I digress.
Yeah, and another topic that Agent Kruger mentioned earlier, but he didn't really say what it was the Demon Core. I don't know if you're aware of what that is, ETA, but that story is fucking insane. Talk about shenanigans and tomfoolery. God damn, that's a crazy story.
Talk about Butterfinger.
Oh,
no,
just like the safety protocols they were using were basically like, yeah, it'll be fine. Like that's just what.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Hey, screw it.
It's crazy. It's a crazy story. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, at times there's many times where people were directly exposed to it, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll do that another time maybe. But it's pretty crazy. What they were up to.
The most, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the most anyone who's ever been officially recorded as to being exposed to such levels of radiation. I mean, Chernobyl is probably like a strong second compared to the poor soul that, gave his life just because he saved everyone in the room, really.
Yeah, it fell and he caught it, right?
He smacked it off. I mean, when it was on it, he smacked it off with his bare hand. So, like, there's two situations where it's like a sphere situation. This was the second attempt, and he was using a flathead screwdriver to control the level of close contact. I'm forgetting. I'm failing myself here. But anyway, the screwdriver fell, or the flathead fell, and it went full contact, and it woke the sleeping giant up, and he smacked it right off. He had to take it off with his bare hand, and just like Agent Anderson had pointed out, that man, that the protocols, the safety protocols for that back in the day, it's just
Lack thereof.
crazy. It's just what they were messing with, or the god makers, really. It's crazy. That is a fascinating story.
Yeah, we should definitely do that sometime.
I agree.
Done deal.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have for this episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this show, you can really help us out by giving us a like and a good review and subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you.